So of all the lessons that we study, this is probably one of those that if we meet in eternity, which I'm hoping that we will, that I want to make sure that we've got it right if we live through the time that we're talking about, because it's vital that we get this right, that we don't make a mistake, or that if we're in the time known as the time of great tribulation, if that time comes and we live in through that time, we need to see as early as possible exactly what's going on, who the players are, and be very careful about how we deal with that. So I'm going to jump back a few verses earlier than where I left off last week, and to pick up the context, and then I'll move on with that from there. John says, "I saw one of his heads as if it had been slain." Now, he's talking here about the beast that had the 10 horns and 7 heads, and he saw one of the heads as if it had been slain. His fatal wound was healed. Later we'll see that it actually is a fatal wound. It doesn't say it was apparently fatal or nearly fatal or whatever, as it seems to in various places. I've checked to try to see as closely as possible, was it actually fatal or was it not? And apparently from what it says, it's a fatal wound, and yet he's healed from that fatal wound. And this is an opportunity or an attempt to counterfeit the resurrection, how that Jesus was slain, the grave was sealed, everyone knew that he was dead, and then 3 days later, or on the third day, I should say, he rose again from the dead, and we know about that. And so this is an attempt to, I think, to replicate that. Something that the adversary does as he tries to replicate the things of God in a way to fool the followers of Christ. So that's what's going on here. But he saw one of this head that he saw that had been slain, suffered a fatal wound, a fatal head wound, apparently, had come to life, but in such a way as to amaze the entire world. So be very suspicious if you ever see a world leader that, having been maybe laid out, having been killed, from Zechariah chapter 11, I think that there's a probability that someone will use a sword or a knife and try to kill him, that they will do head damage as well as other damage to his body. Even though that the wound will be healed so that he will be alive, Zechariah makes it sound like that he will always be wounded, in the sense that he will not be able to see out of his right eye, and his right arm will be limp, and so that he will be crippled because of that, and that he will have a very ugly appearance because of this wound. Even though that he is brought back to life, maybe after he's laid in state or whatever, and maybe in front of the cameras over a period of time, and suddenly coming back to life, and so he'll fool the entire world. But Christians should not be fooled. We've had the book of Revelation all the way along, and there's no reason to be fooled. So, but the whole earth is amazed, and they wander after him and follow after him. So they followed after the beast, and they worship the dragon. Now the dragon is Satan, and we're told that the dragon is Satan, the serpent. He's the adversary, the accuser of the brethren. The dragon. They worship the dragon because it's the dragon who is behind the beast. The dragon is the one who gives his authority to the beast. And so they worship the beast, saying who's like the beast and who's able to wage war with him. And the dragon has the same desires that they have, the same type of fleshly desires and all of those sorts of things. So the dragon is appealing to their worst instincts, and they're following after. But there's going to be a great separation, as you can see, already there's a great separation going on. The people that are followers of Christ are finding themselves more and more at odds or on the outs with the ones that are not followers. And that's going to become more and more obvious as time goes on, that we're going to have to make a decision. We're going to have to make many decisions, and many of those will be not at our choice, that that the world will separate from us and we'll separate from the world as we're trying to live for Christ, as we are living for Christ. But that the world will be saying, those who worship the beast, and notice that it is a matter of worship, worship of the dragon, worship of the beast, they will be saying, who is like the beast and who is able to wage war with him? At this point, that political entity that is the beast becomes the person who is the beast. So the beast, the Antichrist, will be the leader. He will become the leader of this world empire. Even though that there will be 10 kings, nevertheless, this one will be over all of them. They give their authority, their power, and all to him, so that to boost him, and he enables them to be kings for a very short period of time. It says for 1 hour, which means for a very short period of time. Now, this person is recognizable, especially in after he has been killed and brought back to life. There's given to him a mouth speaking arrogant words and blasphemies, and authority to act for 42 months was given to him. Now, the mouth, it says earlier that it's the mouth of the lion, which causes me to think that it's a possibility that it's a Anglo, because of the connection of the Anglo-American beast, I guess you would say, the rider on the white horse, but the lion with the eagle's wings in Daniel chapter 7, chapter 7, and also Revelation chapter 6. So the rider on the white horse. So because of that, it kind of causes me to think that it's possibly English. But notice, the things that you see about him is his mouth, speaking arrogant words and blasphemies. He will blaspheme God, he will blaspheme Christ, he will blaspheme the entities of heaven, right up until the time that he's cast into the lake of fire. He'll be cast alive into the lake of fire. You know that the lake of fire, if he's still a human being, that the lake of fire would consume the flesh, and so he will be in a different body, the type of body that the body will burn for eternity, for forever. It'll go on burning forever. But right up until the time that he's cast alive into the lake of fire, he will be blaspheming. He'll be having things to say against God and against Christ. And notice his authority. His authority is for 42 months. In Daniel, we were told that the last week of years would be divided into 2 parts. So it begins with the confirmation of the covenant, probably the confirmation that, it doesn't say what covenant, but I believe it's probably confirmation of the covenant God made with Abraham to give him a piece of land, and then all the other promises that were made to Abraham, that covenant that God made with Abraham. But in the middle of the week, it said, so the week is 7 years. So the middle of the week would be 3.5 years. Months, Hebrew months are 30 days. And so 12, or 32, 42 30-day months would be 1,260 days. So sometimes we see 1,260 days, sometimes we see 42 months, sometimes we see times and half a time. That means a year, 2 years, and half a year, or we just see the 3.5 years. So that authority that he's given is limited. The adversary, the accuser of the brethren, Satan, the dragon, the serpent, gives him authority, but it's his authority. It's Satan's authority to act. And so Satan has a certain amount of authority. He gives his authority to the Antichrist. And so for 42 months he will exercise that authority in the ways that we read about. And so Satan is behind all of that, and yet Satan is very jealous, And so even though he's working through the Antichrist, nevertheless, there's a man that has the authority of Satan, and it's only a matter of time till you can see that this is going to result in catastrophe, a catastrophe for the Antichrist. He's going to end up in the lake of fire, but you can see why that Satan will withdraw his spirit from him when it gets real close to the end of that. So, but he's given authority for 42 months. Now he, the Antichrist, opened his mouth to blaspheme against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, that is, those who dwell in heaven. Now his tabernacle here is talking about the habitation of God, the heaven as the place where God dwells, where his dwelling place is, but also all those who dwell in heaven. And so you will remember that this begins with Satan being cast out of heaven, the dragon being cast out of heaven by a war that takes place between Michael, the archangel, and his armies against the dragon, or Satan, and his armies. A third of the angels will fight against Michael and his armies, and so Satan will lead that battle, that fight. But and you can read about that in Revelation chapter 12, beginning with verse 1, but also in Daniel chapter 12, beginning with verse 1. So in both places, you'll see the same thing, and that is that Michael will rise up at that point. At the point that he rises up, Satan is cast to earth. When Satan is cast to earth, he has a very short period of time, and he knows that. And he probably knows this scripture better than I do, and he knows that his time is very short. He has 3.5 years, and so that 3.5 years, that 1,260 days, will be the amount of time that he gives the Antichrist. Now, we know that in reading Daniel chapter 12, that there's also 1,290 days. It doesn't say what happens. It just talks about how blessed is he that waits until the 1,290 days from the time of the abomination of desolation, when the sacrifice comes to an end, is brought to an end, and all of that happens. There is 1,260 days that the Antichrist has authority, but he says, how blessed are those who wait for the 1,290 days, and then he says, that talks about 1,335 days in that same, almost same sentence. And so 1,260 days, 1,290 days, 1,335 days from the abomination of desolation until, and different events happen. I believe that those are probably the fulfillment of the things that are celebrated by the Hebrew feast, the feast days that God gave. And by the way, those are not just Hebrew feast days, although Moses also gave them to them, but I believe that those are feast days that are probably have to do with time. They probably have more to do with a celebration of anniversaries of a certain time. And the Feast of Tabernacles will be the one of those that will continue to be celebrated after the resurrection and after the setting up of the 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth. And so will be the Feast of Tabernacles. Anyway, so, but he blasphemed the name of God. He'll be blaspheming Christ. He'll be blaspheming against Michael and all the others, those who dwell in heaven. And then, that's in heaven. He's blasphemed. That's all he can do now, is to shout out curses and blasphemy against heaven. But what can he do on earth? Notice verse 7. It was also given him to make war with the saints. Now, to make war, I looked up almost every word of this just to see if I could get any more insight into this. But the idea here is that he will do everything that he can to overcome the saints. Now, the word saints there is holy ones. And so those who are living holy in the sense that they are dedicated to God and to God's purposes. They've yielded themselves to Christ fully and completely, unreservedly. They've yielded themselves to Christ. They yielded themselves to God. They are totally dedicated, consecrated to God. They are holy. And as time goes on, maybe at first some might be wishy-washy or whatever it might be, but as time goes on, they are going to make a total commitment. They will either be in all the way or out all the way, because it's going to be too hard. Now, this is going to be some of the hardest days that have ever existed. The things that are going to take place, and we've read through the book of Revelation. You may have read through the book of Revelation. You know the various things that take place. There are going to be some really hard days for everyone. But for the saints of God, it says in Daniel chapter 11, that they will be granted a little help. So those who have insight will be giving, at this very same time, right after the abomination of desolation, almost immediately, those who have insight will be given understanding to the many, and so they will gain understanding. They will be giving insight, and in the next chapter it tells us that those who have insight will shine, and lead many to righteousness, will shine like the stars forever and ever. Their glory will be will be to shine, and so God will be with them. It tells us in Daniel chapter 11, and so they'll be granted a little help. In fact, many will join them in hypocrisy because of the help that they've been given. And so, even though they will be dying by sword, flame, captivity, and plunder for many days, for these days, it's going to be tough. And even though they will be exiled, they will be probably driven out of the cities, they'll be probably dispossessed, and because that's part of what the plunder's talking about. And they'll go through a lot of things, and so it's going to be very tough. But he will be making war against the saints and to overcome them, and that is the power that he's been given. That's his purpose. That's what he's doing, and he has authority over every tribe, every people, every tongue, every nation. So this one has this world entity, this 10-nation confederacy, this united united kingdom of all the peoples of the earth for this period of time, until that very end, when the kings of the east will be called forth to fight to come against Israel, to try to finally wipe out all of that. And they'll send in 200 million men army to cross the Euphrates. The Euphrates will be dried up so that they can cross. And that's when God himself will step in, right at the very last. But up until then, for this period of time, for those 42 months, he has the authority, and he'll be making war, and he'll be overcoming the saints. That's what he'll be doing. Now, after the 42 months, and I believe it's probably between the 42 months and the 1200, between the 1260 days and the 1290 days, is probably when that the Antichrist and the false prophet will, and even the dragon, that the three spirits will come out of their throats like frogs, and will go out into the kings of the earth to bring them together for this battle, the last battle of Armageddon. This is a battle that is to take place. The first battle had taken place almost 7 years earlier. Now this battle will take place again. A different set of kings. Those were the kings of the north, the first ones. These are the kings of the east. These are the eastern peoples, where they're the only place where they actually have enough people to send a 200 million man army against them. That's almost as much as the entire, I think the entire population of the United States is only like 350 million. So you can see that a 200 million man army is a very large army, and they will they'll cover the land, and as they cross the land, they will leave it totally devastated behind them, as they're having to use everything in the land to feed themselves and take care of themselves as they're moving forward. But anyway, he's given authority for a period of time, not forever, but for a period of time. During that period of time, all those who dwell on the earth will worship him. Now, it doesn't stop there. I'm glad that's not a period, it's a comma. And the reason I'm glad for that is because it would almost make it sound like everybody that's left on the earth would worship him. And that's not what it's intending to say. It's trying to separate or to show the division between those who dwell on the earth who who will worship him and those who will not worship him. What's the difference? Everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of the life of the Lamb who has been slain. Everyone whose name is not written in the book of life will worship him. And so another reason that it's so important that people come to know Christ, that they come to know him and they get to the point of learning to love him, and so that when this separation, this division is taking place, they know which side they're on. There will be some play acting in those early days. After the abomination of desolation, there will be some play acting. Some people will be hanging out maybe with Christians, trying to get some of the benefits of being with the Christian people because they will be granted a little help. Nevertheless, understand that in due time, they will be separated. They will want to worship, and especially when we get to the point of the mark of the beast, because, and that's why it's so important. With the study tonight, I want you to know absolutely, I want to make up your mind, no matter what happens, there's nothing in the world that could be worse that I can imagine than to take the mark of the beast. You name what is worse than that, and I would tell you that you have that worst thing that you're thinking, and that is and the consequence of that as well, because there's nothing worse than that. Everyone whose name has not been written from the foundation of the world in the book of the life of the Lamb who has been slain will worship him. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. Listen. It's kind of like you hear every once in a while. You hear a preacher. I remember Charles Stanley a lot of times saying, "Listen to me, listen to me." And that's what this is. If you've got an ear, listen now. Listen very carefully, because here is wisdom, is what he's saying. The wisdom to go through this time. If anyone is destined for captivity, to captivity he goes. In other words, if that is your lot, if God leads you in such a way, or you find yourself into captivity, then go into captivity and suffer that captivity. It'll be a very short period of time. In fact, in one place they said it'll be for 10 days, and I think that just means it'll be a very short period of time. The captivity will not last long. But if you go into captivity, if that is your lot, accept it with cheerful faithfulness. Be faithful unto death. Be cheerful. Be I don't want to say joyful or cheerful, but I know that sounds wrong. I'm trying to think of what word would fit better there. But accept it be at peace with it. That is where you are. And so there is a time when you have to consider. I can remember being diagnosed with cancer and having to consider what all that means. And I needed to be at peace with that, and I was at peace with that. And God saw fit to take care of the cancer and through surgery and to deal with all of that. But had He not, and had they not been able to do something with that, I was at peace with that as well. And so I don't know what your lot will be in this time. I do know that some will live all the way through it until Christ comes. That's the reality. Some will live until the trumpet sounds, until the archangel shouts, and until Christ says, come up here, and you're changed in a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, to join those who have come back with Him, who have been changed, resurrected, and now changed in glorified bodies, going up in robes of white to meet Christ in the air. You will join them. There will be some that will do that, but there will be many who will be going up from time to time as they're brought into captivity, as they're killed by the sword, or as they starve or thirst to death, or whatever way they die. But whatever it is, joyfully accept it. Be at peace with it. And I'm not saying try to find an opportunity to get caught or whatever. I think you have if you ever studied the rules of engagement, or I don't know, I'm trying to think what it was called. Anyway, if you've ever been in the military, you know that you have a duty. If you're captured by enemy forces, you have a duty to try to escape at the earliest opportunity. Some people just immediately, they quit trying to escape. They don't ever try. But if you can escape, escape and evade, and that keeps the enemy having to keep extra troops there and all that. But anyway, different story. But if you go into captivity, then accept the captivity. Don't try to fight, to cry and ask God and plead with God. God, give me an opportunity to get away and I won't get caught again or whatever. Because some will go into captivity and some will die in captivity. Some will, that's just a reality. If anyone kills with the sword, and I went up and looked this up again because I think it's in the King James that says if anyone is to be killed with the sword he must be killed. And yet this one says if anyone kills with the sword he must be killed. And I'll just tell you, I don't know which of those is correct. But I think that what it's saying is if you're going to die, then accept the fact that God will be with you and give you the ability to be faithful unto death. Because as we read back in Revelation chapter 12, and I think it's verse 10, it talks about those who will die. And and it says that they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb, the word of the testimony, and they did not love their life, even to the death. And so that may be who you are. And if it is, don't try to change that. Accept that. The blood of the Lamb. Make sure the blood of the Lamb covers. And then be faithful unto death. Whatever is required. And maintain the word of your testimony all the way through. Don't give up and give up your testimony just because you've been captured. Because if those who are to die by the sword will die by the sword. Now it may also mean that if you die, if you kill someone with the sword, then your execution could be considered legitimate. In other words, it's not you dying for Christ; it's dying because you've murdered maybe a law enforcement officer or something of that sort. If they're officers that are working for the government of at that time. So I don't know for certain which way that should be translated or if both. But nevertheless, when you're captive, when you're taken captive, when they take away your goods, sword, flame, captivity, and plunder, those means when those things are happening, accept that with a cheerful outlook. That's what this word perseverance means. Perseverance. Here's the perseverance and faith of the saints. Perseverance means to cheerfully continue, cheerfully carry on with faith, being faithful, just like the idea, faithful unto death. Carry on with what you're doing, and don't give up because that you're taken captive or because that you will go before the sword. Maintain your faith. Be faithful unto death. Carry on. Here's the perseverance, the faithfulness, cheerful perseverance and faith of the saints. And he will use this saying again, and I think we'll see it in chapter 14, which I decided a little later tonight to go ahead and put in so that if we get that far we can. But anyway, then the second beast. Now, the first person of the evil trinity is the dragon. And he gives his authority and power to the second person of the evil trinity, who is the Antichrist. Now, the second beast is the third person of the evil trinity, and this is the false prophet. He's the one who bears witness to the second person of to the first beast, who is the second person of the evil trinity. He bears witness to him, even though it's a false witness. He's apparently possibly a religious leader, and he gives his gives his witness to that one, but it's a false witness. But we've got to be very careful of that. Now he will come up, and this is another beast who's coming up out of the earth, another organization, and I believe this will be the kind of the religion of the world at that time. There's some reason to think that this religion is Chrislam, and Chrislam is a joining together, an amalgamation of Islam and Christianity. So Chrislam brings together the Abrahamic or the supposedly trying to bring together the Jews, the Christians, and the Islamists. However, the Jews will never actually join into it. So it just turns out to be those who are backslidden Christians along with the Islamists will join together, and they will have a head over them. Or they may have two heads over them. And so it may be that when it says he has two horns like a lamb, it may mean that there are two individuals there, one who speaks for Christianity, the head of that backslidden Christian church, as well as the one who speaks for probably for Sunni Islam, or who will and they will join together in this one. But they make one entity, nevertheless, one organization, this beast coming out of the earth. But the one, and I want to say, I really believe that it will come down to that person, that there will be a person that will take these two to bring them together. And so in doing that, he will speak like the Lamb, he'll speak like he's a Christian, he'll speak like he's a person of God, but he will also speak as the dragon. Now, what do I mean by that? The dragon is a liar. He's always been a liar. And this one will be the channel through which the dragon, Satan, will speak. So Satan will, not only will he be himself as the dragon, but he will totally be in control of the Antichrist, the first person of the evil trinity, and he will totally be in control of the third person of the evil trinity, which is this one who speaks has two horns like a lamb, but speaks as the dragon. And he will speak through him, and he will act through him, and he will do the things that he's going to do on earth, he will do through him. Now, he, making the second beast, the third person of the evil trinity, the false prophet, exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence. Now, the first beast is given authority by the dragon for 42 months. And so now this one, so he has authority for 42 months, but this is the one who exercises that authority. So he will be the one who will call down fire from heaven to destroy the enemies of the Antichrist. He's the one who will seem to be working miracles, the one who has the miracle working power during this period of time. And because of the things that he's able to do, it will be very obvious, or seem very obvious to the people of the earth. This one has supernatural power. He can do things that has only been possible to someone with supernatural power, to God himself. And so this one will have that type of authority, and it will cause people to wander after him. Do not wander after anyone because of their authority, because of their ability to work miracles. You know Christ, and you need to, he said, my sheep know my voice. Make sure you know the voice of Christ. One of the reasons you need to spend that devoted time with Christ and listen to him is to get accustomed to hearing his voice, because the Antichrist can sound so much, he can mock and sound so much like Christ. And that's what this one does. He will try to say many of the things that Christians have believed that Christ would have said, or that they believe, maybe even things that they've been told by preachers or churches, that this is of Christ. And he will say these things, but he will speak as a dragon and exercise the authority of the first beast in his presence. He makes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose fatal wound was healed. By the way, whom should you worship? Worship God the Father. Worship Jesus Christ. But do not give your worship to any human person on earth. You've got to know Christ. You've got to know God the Father and worship him alone. that will not be approved, nor will it be accepted by God, and it in fact will bring you into condemnation if you worship. And don't give great value, in other words, to this beast. Yes, he will seem to have, he had a fatal wound. That fatal wound was healed. It's been a miraculous thing. You will see miracles that you might have heard about from the New Testament, and you heard about from various Old Testament prophets and judges and other things. And you see these things and you say, this has got to be of God. Nevertheless, if it tries to cause you to worship a man, especially a man who has suffered a fatal head wound and been healed, you will understand that at the time. That could take many forms, and I could give you some ideas, but I'm not going to tonight. But that could take many forms. But be very careful about that. When Christ appears, you cannot mistake that. Every eye will see him. Every ear will hear him. He will appear so that those who are on earth will weep when they recognize him, and they will mourn because they will recognize when those who are dead in Christ are raised, and those who are alive and remain are changed and are being caught up to meet him in the air. They will mourn when they see Christ, those who are left on earth at that point. Until that time, you can't mistake that. But if you can mistake it, if you've got to go out to some place to meet him, or if you've got to whatever, understand that's not Christ. The false prophet, then in verse 13, he performs great signs so that he makes fire to come down out of heaven to the earth in the presence of men. Now we know that the prophets of God were able to do that. That's one of the things you might say, well, hey, maybe this is Elijah, or maybe this is Elisha, or maybe this is and maybe that he is that prophet. Don't believe those things. Also, there are two witnesses that will be apparently, I believe, at the Temple Mount there, and we read about those in chapter 11 of Revelation, and they also will have the ability to call down fire. So be very careful about that. Don't let signs and wonders lead you very far. Trust in Christ, trust in God, and just worship him. But don't let signs and wonders, no matter what they may appear to be, don't allow them to deceive you. And that's what these are designed to do. Great signs, causing fire to come down in the presence of men. And it says in verse 14, he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs it was given him to perform in the presence of the beast. So he is deceiving them. Don't be deceived. If you're deceived, I'm sorry for you. If I'm deceived, I'm sorry for me, because this is the deception that will be the fatal deception. This is deception. This is a deception that will be absolutely catastrophic in its consequences. He deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs that it was given to him to perform in the presence of the beast. So the Antichrist will give him to this, will allow him to exercise his authority, and it's in his name, in the name of the Antichrist, and in the name of the dragon. He will be exercising this authority and doing these signs. Don't fall for any of that, because if you do, it will be fatal in its consequences. And now it says, telling those who dwell on the earth to make an image to the beast. Now the word image there is a word that as computer people we recognize. That's the word icon. So he'll tell them to make an icon to the beast. So this is, I don't know exactly what that icon will look like, but it will be something. Now, in Daniel, it says that the Antichrist will cause his people to set up the abomination of desolation. Doesn't talk about. Now, Paul will later talk about the Antichrist taking his seat in the temple of God. I'm thinking that these may be two different things. One may take place at the time, very shortly after, or at the time of the abomination of desolation, but the other takes place at some point, possibly takes place some point after. I'm not sure about all of that. But anyway, he tells those who dwell, now this is the third person of the evil trinity, the false prophet, tells those who dwell on the earth to make an icon to the beast, who had the wound of the sword and has come to life. So he's wounded by the sword and he's come to life. But the word, you notice there's an asterisk just before the word had, possibly on there. That the reason for that asterisk, if you look it up in the front of it, is because that instead of it actually saying had in the past tense, the word actually says has. He has the wound of the sword and has come to life. And so the ones who interpreted this, who translated it, did not want to use that form that could be a present form. This wound is something that had happened in the past. And so he still, but it's very obvious, to me at least, in Zechariah chapter 11, that he continues to have that wound. He's not continually being wounded by the sword, but the wound itself, even though it is healed to the point that he is brought back to life, nevertheless, the wound itself is not closed or not healed in the sense of as though it had never happened. It's going to be obvious. And another way of looking at that, another thing you might think about that just occurred to me, you know that when Jesus was resurrected, and when he appeared to his disciples, he said, "Look here at my hands and see the nail prints. Stick your hand in my side," he told Thomas, and to the place where the spear had gone, and believe. He still had the marks of the nails and the spear, or the sword. The spear, and probably even still had the marks on his head of the crown of thorn. And so makes me think that if the Antichrist is trying to mimic Christ, why would he not also have the wound, so that anyone who would see him would recognize this is the one who's come back to life after being killed with a sword, had suffered a fatal head wound, and has come to life. And so that's just a thought. But anyway, he has that. Do not worship him. It was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, the icon again. This is talking about the third person of the evil trinity will give breath to the icon of the beast, so that the image, the icon of the beast, would even speak and cause as many as do not worship the image of the beast, the icon again, to be killed. Now, we know that an icon of the beast could also be a hologram, a holographic image. So in this day and age, it would not be that hard for us to understand how that an icon could be made to speak, or it could be made to, but I think it's going to be something that is going to so thrill or enthrall people that those who go and see that will fall down and worship before the image of the beast. And he will cause them to do that. And any who do not, this will be a replay of Daniel's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego as they refused to bow. They showed up. They didn't stay home on that day. They showed up, but they refused to bow down when the music started to the image that had been set up before them. They refused to worship, and because of that, they were cast into the fiery furnace. And that's very similar to what will happen in this day. They will cause as many as do not worship the image, and if it's the icon, if that's what it is, that's a possibility that wherever you are, that it might also be able to be brought into such a way that, I don't know how to say it, but so that you will be caused to, that will be the means whereby you will be judged, and possibly many will be killed, taken captive and then killed, either sword, flame, captivity, and plunder, because they refuse, when they see the icon, they refuse to bow down and worship. It's a matter of worship. And he causes all, now this is talking about the third person of the evil trinity again, he causes all, the small and the great, and the rich and the poor, and the free men and the slaves, to be given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead. Now this word mark also can mean either a statue, or it can mean a scratch, or it could mean something like a tattoo or other things. We don't know what it means. It's just a mark, but it's for a sign. It's a sign on the right hand or on the forehead, and it is to show that their allegiance to the beast, that they worship the beast. So they're given a mark on their right hand or on their forehead, and he provides, talking about the false prophet, he provides that no one is able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark, either the name of the beast or the number of his name. And so now it's making it more clear what that is. But a little later it'll tell us, in fact the next verse I believe it is. So he provides that you can't buy or sell without it. Now we are entering to, I think you could see that probably we're very near to a time when what is the world reserve currency will probably stumble and fall because of what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now, and that is the continual borrowing so much money against the American dollar. Sooner or later, that has got to cause that to be so inflated that the dollar will be worthless. And the people of the earth who are now trading in American dollars, there is no other reserve currency. That is the reserve currency. That is the one currency, and it's not a bundle of currencies, it's just the U.S. dollar. And it has become now devalued to the point that people will get to the point of saying, I'm not going to trade with that. And so there's already a talk of how are they going to do that. And the move toward a digital currency is already going on, and I think you can see that. So that will enable them to say the dollars that you have are worthless. Whether you have them, all of that is worthless. All you will have is the zeros and one, the digital currency, and it will be what we have on our computer, and that's all that you'll have. And they will make it impossible to buy or sell other than the one who has that. Now, you will have to have the mark, the name of the beast or the number of his name, in order to buy or sell on this economy. Now, will God take care of his people? God's always taking care of his people. God can supernaturally take care of you. But if he doesn't, if God doesn't provide food, if God doesn't provide water, if God doesn't provide safety, shelter, and the things that you need, nevertheless, it is a very bad idea to try to buy them for yourself with this. For one reason, as that this economy also will fail. So the American dollar is going to fail. That's not that's the greatest probability. But this system also will fail. It's not going to work. And so don't give up your soul. Don't give up your future, your security, your eternity. Don't give it up for a few morsels, a few crumbs of something that's going to be worthless, that will never satisfy. Stay true to him. Be faithful unto death, and he said he would give you the crown of life. Here is wisdom that he says, let him who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for the number is that of a man, his number is 666. So this is where the 666 comes in, and you've heard it. Almost everyone knows about the mark of the beast. If you know anything about prophecy at all, you heard something about the mark of the beast. But I've also heard people who were professing to be Christians saying that they would take the mark of the beast so that they could feed their children, or for some noble purpose. I want you to know you will not feed your children that way, nor will it be a noble purpose. It will cost you everything. So don't take the mark of the beast. Know what it is. When the time comes, know what it is. Now, I know this is where we're going to come back to next week. Lord saying the same, if everything works out. Nevertheless, I'm going to go just a little farther, and then I'm still going to back up to chapter 14, verse 9. Then another angel, a third one, followed them with a loud voice, saying, if anyone worships the beast and his image and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, he will also drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is mixed in full strength in the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, those who worship the beast in his image, and whoever receives the mark of his name. Here is the perseverance of the saints, who keep the commandments of God and keep their faith in Jesus. And so I wanted to read that part to you. I want to emphasize that more, but nevertheless, I wanted to make sure that you got that as we leave tonight, and then I will have more to say about that as time goes forward. All right, I'm going to unmute your mics. You can turn on your camera if you'd like. Let's see how many of you stayed. It looks like almost everybody stayed with us. Very good. And a few joined us that weren't on. So somebody joined and some have left. So that's all. It's all good. Any question or anything that you wanted to ask that maybe I said something wrong, or I go through and I listen to this whole thing over before I put it on Wednesday morning early, and I always find a few mistakes where I said something. I talk so fast that I say things with my mouth that my brain didn't think through, and I know better than what I say when I do that. And I don't know if you've done that or not, but anyway, any questions or anything that anyone would like to? All right, are we ready to pray then? We're good? Ready to pray? Let's pray together then. Father, we are so grateful for the grace of the living God that keeps us day by day. And we're thankful, dear Lord, you cared enough about us to send your word forth. In Daniel, you sent Gabriel to bring your word, first in visions and then interpretation and revelation. Jesus himself brought forth these revelations and the understandings. And we're grateful, dear Lord, for that. We know, dear Lord, that you will give us the understanding in the right time. This is an important lesson. These lessons are important. We know, dear Lord, that things are going to get tough, and they're getting tough already. I pray that you'll give us the grace, dear Lord, to persevere, to cheerfully endure, and to remain faithful in spite of all the things that come about. You've heard the requests that have been made tonight, and we do pray that you'd meet those needs. You know the special challenges that we'll face even in the days soon to come. I pray, dear Lord, that you'll be with each one, that you will bless and bring us back together again soon. And for all that you are and all that you do, Father, we praise you, we thank you, and we give you honor and glory in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.